Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are jumping right into an absolutely incredible story. We're talking about sheer athletic dominance, extraordinary personal resilience, and some incredibly high-stakes international politics.
That is exactly right. We are unpacking the life and legacy of Brittney Griner. And honestly, when you look at the entire scope of her journey, it's just staggering.
It truly is. I mean, we're tracing a trajectory that starts in a local high school gym in Houston, Texas, where a young athlete was really just figuring out her game. And then, fast forward, she lands right in the very center of global headlines in a way absolutely no one could have ever predicted.
For sure. The sheer unlikeliness of it all is what makes this so captivating for us. You have a purely athletic story that, almost out of nowhere, collides with some of the heaviest global geopolitical issues of our time.
Right, which naturally leads us to ask the big question. How exactly did a basketball superstar become a global geopolitical focal point?
Well, let's unpack this because her story goes so far beyond your standard sports biography. Yes, she is undeniably one of the most dominant athletes of her generation. Her physical talent is just generational, but her life constantly intersects with massive cultural and political conversations that affect millions of people.
Exactly. We're talking about critical conversations around personal identity, the sometimes harsh reality of the economics of women's professional sports, and eventually an intense standoff involving international diplomacy. To really understand her legacy, you have to look at how all of these pieces fit together like a giant puzzle.
So, here's our roadmap for today's explainer. First up, a basketball prodigy emerges.
Second, dominating the professional court.
Third, beyond the basketball court.
Fourth, the Russian imprisonment crisis.
And finally, fifth, freedom and evolving legacy.
All right, let's jump straight into Section 1. A basketball prodigy emerges, dominating the amateur ranks. So Griner grew up in Houston, Texas, and it became clear very early on that she possessed a truly rare talent. By the time she was playing for Nimitz High School, she was already a total force of nature on the court.
Oh, absolutely. And you know, her dedication to her craft was unmatched. To build up her strength and really prepare her body for dunking, she actually practiced with the boys' basketball team and even worked directly with a football coach. It was a rigorous regimen, but it definitely paid off. She dunked an unbelievable 52 times in just 32 games as a senior.
Which is just mind-blowing for high school basketball. And her defensive statistics across the board were equally staggering. Try to wrap your head around this. 318 blocks in a single season.
Wow.
And 25 blocks in a single game. Think about that, 25. That remains the most ever recorded by a female in a U.S. high school game.
It's hard to even conceptualize blocking 25 shots in one single matchup. That's almost a block a minute. So by 2009, she was naturally declared the nation's #1 high school player. Her highlight reels were so spectacular that a YouTube compilation of her dunks went totally viral. We're talking millions of views. It was such a cultural phenomenon that it actually led to a personal meeting with NBA legend Shaquille O'Neal. She wasn't just a high school player anymore, she was a national spectacle.
And she carried that momentum right into college. Her time at Baylor University holds incredible historic weight. In 2012, she led Baylor to a perfect 40-0 undefeated season to win the national championship. A perfect season, 40-0. That alone secures your legacy forever. She obviously took home the Most Outstanding Player award that year, but her broader career numbers are what really cement her status as an all-time great. She racked up over 2,000 career points and a massive 748 career blocks, which, to put that into perspective for a second, is the all-time NCAA record. So the absolute crucial takeaway here is this. Brittney Griner is the only NCAA basketball player ever, men's or women's, to reach both 2,000 points and block 500 shots. She blew right past 500, obviously, but she's in a statistical club entirely by herself. Exactly. She didn't just excel at the collegiate level. She entirely redefined the defensive game. Opposing players literally had to alter how they shot the ball if she was anywhere remotely near the paint. It was a real game changer.
Moving on to Section 2, dominating the professional court, the WNBA and beyond.
With a collegiate resume like that, her professional debut was highly anticipated to say the very least. In 2013, she was selected as the #1 overall pick in the WNBA draft by the Phoenix Mercury.
And she wasted zero time making her presence known. In her very first professional game, she tied the WNBA dunk record. Right from day one, she announced to the world that she was going to be a major problem for the rest of the league.
Which brings us to a huge milestone year, 2014.
In just her second professional season, playing alongside seasoned legends like Diana Taurasi, Griner secured her first WNBA championship.
Her defensive presence just couldn't be stopped. Can you imagine blocking 11 shots in a single regular season game at the professional level? Because that's exactly what she did, setting a WNBA record. She also became the first WNBA player to ever dunk in a playoff game. She was quite literally changing how the game was played above the rim, introducing a level of verticality that the women's league hadn't consistently seen before.
But to understand the full picture of her career and to really understand the massive events that happen a bit later, we have to talk about the economics of women's sports. While WNBA salaries certainly provide a living, they are relatively modest, especially for rookies. The international market, however, is a completely different story.
This is such a vital piece of context. In her 2013 offseason, she signed a 4-month contract to play in China for $600,000. That was roughly 12 times what she made in her entire rookie season in the US.
12 times. It's like night and day financially. That stark contrast explains exactly why WNBA superstars are practically financially compelled to play overseas during their offseason. They have these incredibly short windows as athletes to maximize their earning potential, which leads them to compete in countries like China and, critically to our story, Russia. Let's shift gears to Section 3, Beyond the Basketball Court, Identity and Activism.
Griner's transition from sheer athletic dominance to having a profound cultural footprint is really fascinating. In 2013, right as she was stepping into the intense professional spotlight, she made the courageous decision to publicly come out. By living her truth so openly, she instantly became a high-profile figure for LGBTQ+ representation in the sports world. And she was incredibly open about the struggles she faced growing up. She said, quote, "It's hard, just being picked on for being different, just being bigger, my sexuality, everything." You know, it takes a ton of courage to share those deeply personal childhood experiences with bullying on a national stage, but she took that pain and actively channeled it into advocacy. She published a memoir called In My Skin, specifically to help young people who might be dealing with bullying and struggling with self-acceptance. She didn't stop there either. She broke some major boundaries in the fashion and sports marketing world. She signed a landmark endorsement deal with Nike, where she modeled clothes specifically branded as menswear. Back in 2013, that was a huge deal and completely pushed back on traditional gender roles in a way we rarely saw from major athletic brands. And her activism only continued to grow as her career progressed. During the highly unusual 2020 WNBA season, which people often refer to as the Wubble season, there were widespread national protests happening following the deaths of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor.
Right. And amidst this intense national climate, Griner and her teammates made the collective decision to refuse to take the floor during the playing of the national anthem.
She became very vocal about her stance on this. She explicitly stated she didn't believe the anthem should be played at sporting events at all. Her argument was that the focus needed to remain squarely on addressing systemic civil rights issues rather than sports as usual.
It was a very clear demonstration of her utilizing her massive platform to draw attention to the causes she felt deeply about. She was making her voice heard on complex societal issues that reached far beyond the basketball court.
Now we arrive at Section 4, the Russian imprisonment crisis, a global standoff.
This brings us to the geopolitical crisis that suddenly brought her incredible career to a complete and total halt in early 2022. Like many WNBA players looking to maximize their earnings, as we discussed earlier, Griner had been playing in the Russian Premier League during her off-season. But on February 17, 2022, her routine travel through Sheremetyevo International Airport near Moscow turned into a major international incident. Russian customs officials searched her luggage and found vaporizer cartridges containing less than a single gram of hash oil. Now, to be totally clear, this was a cannabis extract medically prescribed to her back home in Arizona. But under incredibly strict Russian drug laws, it is entirely illegal. And we really have to look at the timing of this arrest because it's a crucial piece of the puzzle. This happened right as extreme tensions were building between the United States and Russia. It was literally days before the Russian invasion of Ukraine and the subsequent leveling of heavy international sanctions. Talk about a perfect storm. What might have been a routine customs issue instantly became deeply intertwined with a massive geopolitical conflict. The situation escalated incredibly rapidly from there. After her initial arrest in February, the U.S. State Department investigated and eventually took the highly significant step of declaring her wrongfully detained. That specific designation signaled they viewed this as a political hostage situation rather than a standard international legal matter.
Then, in July, she pleaded guilty in a Russian court. She stated she had packed in a hurry and made an honest mistake bringing the cartridges. But the response from the Russian court was just staggering. In August, she was handed a severely harsh sentence of 9 years in a penal colony.
The reality of a Russian penal colony is incredibly bleak. We're talking about harsh labor and brutal, isolated conditions. The world watched anxiously as she was transferred to a remote facility in Mordovia. Families, fans, and diplomats pushed incredibly hard for a resolution behind the scenes. Finally, in December 2022, after nearly 10 agonizing months of detention, she was released. However, securing that release required a highly controversial one-for-one prisoner swap, approved at the highest levels of the U.S. State Department. Brittney Griner, an American athlete, was exchanged for Victor Bout, who is a notoriously well-known Russian arms dealer. The decision generated immense debate, really underscoring the intense leverage Russia was exerting during the standoff. You basically had a basketball player carrying less than a gram of a legally prescribed medical substance from her home state being traded for an individual who was serving a 25-year sentence in the U.S. for serious international crimes. It was such a stark contrast. It really highlighted just how complex and incredibly high-stakes diplomatic negotiations can become when international relations are strained to their absolute breaking point.
Which leads us to our final part, Section 5, Freedom and Evolving Legacy, the Comeback. After surviving an unimaginably harrowing ordeal, Griner triumphantly returned to American soil. And naturally, her return to the basketball court was just as highly anticipated. In May 2023, she made her official return to the WNBA, stepping onto the court to an incredibly massive, emotional standing ovation from the crowd.
It was a beautiful moment. But it wasn't just her return to basketball that made headlines. It was also how her personal perspective had evolved. Upon her return in 2023, Griner chose to resume standing for the national anthem.
Right. She spoke about this shift, stating that her experience as being detained in a Russian jail led her to appreciate, in her specific words, uniquely American freedoms. She noted a renewed perspective on rights she felt were specific to the United States.
And at the exact same time, she has used her horrific experience to champion the return of other wrongfully detained Americans overseas. She's emphasized that she absolutely continues to support the right to protest, while using her own renewed freedom to advocate relentlessly for those who are still locked up abroad.
This incredible comeback journey brings us to Paris 2024 and a highly emotional milestone, securing her third consecutive Olympic gold medal.
Helping Team USA secure a hard-fought victory against France, the medal ceremony was incredibly powerful. Griner stood on the podium openly weeping as the anthem played.
And it is so easy to understand why. She reflected on the fact that just a couple of years prior, she honestly didn't know if she would ever even be back home, let alone have the opportunity to represent her country and compete on the global stage again. Winning a third gold medal under those kinds of circumstances is a testament to an almost unfathomable level of personal resilience. And clearly, her professional career hasn't missed a single beat since returning. Her recent career moves prove her enduring athletic value in a big way. She signed with the Atlanta Dream in 2025 and then inked a massive 7-figure contract with the Connecticut Sun in 2026.
She is still highly sought after. Plus, she's brought her dominance to the brand new, unrivaled 3-on-3 basketball league.
Yes, the Unrivaled League has been a huge new development in women's basketball. It offers high-level competition and ownership stakes during the off-season right here in the U.S., so players don't have to go overseas.
Exactly, and of course, in classic Brittney Griner fashion, she recorded the first dunk in that league's history. It just goes to show that after absolutely everything she has been through, her love for the game and her raw ability to perform at the highest possible level remains completely untouched.
Which brings us to our final thought for this explainer. What exactly does Brittney Griner's incredibly unique journey teach the next generation about resilience, identity, and the global reality of women's sports?
It is such a massive question to ponder, right? You are looking at a story that moves from a bully kid in Texas to an unstoppable force on the college and professional court, to a political prisoner caught in a geopolitical storm, and finally back to a gold medal winning champion.
Absolutely. Her story forces us to look closely at the intersection of sports, economics, and society in a way very few other athletes' lives ever have. We really hope this explainer gave you a clear and thorough picture of exactly why her legacy is so profoundly impactful.
Thank you so much for joining us, and keep asking the big questions.